Hey everyone, today's the fourth installment of the four-part series, How to Stay Natural and Healthy. This is rule number 4, and it's basically limiting the food that you eat and when you're eating it. So basically, long time ago, we didn't get to eat nearly as often as we do now. You had to work for your food, and it wasn't always available. That's a more recent thing, where we get to eat whenever we feel like it. And it's very easy to overeat when you're eating all day long. The current model for breakfast, lunch, and dinner is flawed, because that's not how... That's a recent development. I'm not talking about like last 10, 20, 30 years, hundreds of years, but still, from an evolutionary perspective, that it's very recent. And we're still adjusting. There's so many benefits that you receive from what's called intermittent fasting, which is basically refraining from eating for a certain period of time. I find that 9 hours is pretty good for me. To eat. So like you'll wake up at 6 and then you'll eat some breakfast, and then like once 3 o'clock comes around, just don't eat anything after that until 6 a.m. the next morning. It might work with your work schedule depending on what you do, just as long as you're not eating just in these huge ranges, just eating all day. Having access to this food is not good for us. It's so easy to overeat, and just to for our bodies to save this energy for later when you're not even going to use it. Dieting is 90% of losing weight, because I mean, the calories in just one pastry, to burn that off, you'd have to run miles, probably 2 or 3 miles for one, donut or something that's covered in frosting. It's got a lot of energy in there, and we're pretty efficient at using our energy, because we needed to be. We needed to be able to eat a piece of celery. Well, that's an exaggeration, but eat a small amount of food and be able to go on and work and do what we needed to do for that day. And now we just have, it's just an abundance of energy and abundance of food. And it really takes its toll on us. But our brains are trained to reward us when we receive a lot of food. If you eat a high-calorie food, you're going to basically release endorphins in your brain that are going to let it know that it's a positive thing that's going on, because your body's realizing that, wow, I've got all this energy now, we're going to store this for later, so just in case we do reach a point that we don't get food, we've got this food and we can eat it in the form of stored fats. There's other things besides when you eat your food that should be considered. I did speak before about some of the additives that are put in our food. I mean, they were made in order to, basically, there's 3 things that they were made in order to do. Either make shelf life longer, make it taste sweet without adding calories, adding pretty colors to it, making it look more vibrant or natural. It's basically fooling you. And actually there's 4, because making it sweeter is also something, even if you're adding calories, that people try to do. So basically those 4 things resulted in a lot of scientists and food developers to create the additives that we have today. Just to name a few: high fructose corn syrup, that is a syrup that's made in the lab. that messes with your metabolism, and it's put in everything. It's a sweetener that does add calories because your body does take the sugars and breaks them down. If it doesn't, it'll store the rest as fat for you to use later. I did discuss in a previous video about how the body will convert that fat into glucose or some other type of sugar in order to use it later. And the cell's mitochondria, the powerhouse of all the cells, will break that down into something that's called ATP, and that's what we can use to do all of our functions. Besides high fructose corn syrup, there's other variants like high maltose corn syrup. I've seen that in some Nature Valley candy bars, because they are candy bars. I mean, you can call them whatever you want. You definitely have to read the labels on all that stuff. And if you see something that you don't recognize, look it up. You'll learn a lot that way. And that's basically how I made my list of what I try to avoid. Another thing is nitrates. Those are linked to causing cancer, and you can find that in cured meats like bacon. You can get natural bacon, and bacon's not an unhealthy food. It's basically just meat, a high-fat meat. It's all meat. It's all fat and all protein, which are very good. In moderation, of course. You could eat half a pound of bacon and be fine, but that should be your one meal. That's you catching a pig and roasting its belly over a fire and eating a reasonable amount. There's nothing wrong with bacon inherently. If you're eating it naturally as a natural food without any of those additives, then you're fine. So just get your bacon without the nitrates. Just read the package. Without the nitrates is more expensive for some reason, probably because it doesn't last as long. But in the end, it's worth it. Your life is worth it. Or just don't eat bacon. I mean, it's simple. There's so many. MSG, monosodium glutamate. I'm sure all of you guys have heard that one. It's delicious. You ever had Doritos? So good. But you can tell right away that something's off. It's too tasty. There's food coloring, FD&C food coloring. They got yellow 5, yellow 6, red 40, blue 1, so many different ones, and they all do different things. Mountain Dew has been known to reduce sperm count in males, and that's from the yellow 5 that's in it, to give it that greenish color that it has. I did speak about hydrogenated oils in a previous episode. That's basically the way to make healthy fats more like plastic by adding hydrogen to the long carbon chains, which makes them more stable and less likely to spoil by being consumed by mold or bacteria. I mean, I've got a couple of examples here. This is some maraschino cherries, and